So tell me, where should I go? To the left where nothing is right? Or to the right where nothing is left? Itachi is a character who found himself in an incredibly difficult position at a young age. In fact, from Itachi's point of view, he may have originally viewed it as a paradox. As we all know, Itachi had to choose between supporting his clan in a violent rebellion, or choose to eliminate them to protect the village. What many don't know is that Itachi has been called by several characters a pacifist. If you look into many of his actions, this idea holds up. Of course, if you look into what he did during the Uchiha massacre, it raises some questions as to how much of a pacifist he really is. What he did and how he treated Sasuke afterwards creates a lot of debating in the Naruto community over how moral he really is. I see this online, and I also have seen it in a poll I recently posted on my channel. Like any debate online, there's not that much nuance in it. Most see him as morally neutral with a skew towards him being morally good to an extent. Personally, I think Itachi's position leading up to the Uchiha massacre is one of the most interesting thought questions posed in the series. It's a fully fleshed out trolley dilemma that makes a proclaimed pacifist choose which group to kill. Itachi massacred his clan in cold blood, but there was no peaceful ending for them anyway. So is this a decision we should hold against him, or did the ends justify the means? First, we should look into the situation Itachi was born into and the thought experiment it provokes. Itachi experienced the effects of wars from as early as 4 years old. Because of this, he became very oriented against conflict and towards peace. Based on his temperament, he seems to have already been born like this, but the Third Great Shinobi War made him even more like this. Both nature and nurture drove him to being desperate to avoid conflict. This desperation made him seek to be the strongest shinobi alive in order to impose his will of conflict aversion among the shinobi world. This drive for power ended up causing him much pain later on, like many other members of his clan. Itachi became a prodigy due to this drive, and this is what set him up in a nightmare position for someone like him. Becoming powerful gave him the influential position he originally wanted in order to impose peace. What he failed to see was that peace is not always attainable, and some decisions are lose-lose situations. Fugaku's pride in Itachi was not solely because of how exceptional he was. His greatness opened up a way for the Uchiha clan to spy on the Leaf. As soon as Fugaku begins to see that Itachi is probably not on his side of the conflict, he loses all his pride in him. Once he sees Sasuke's potential, he begins to finally show Sasuke that he's proud of him. He also tells Sasuke to not end up like Itachi. He wasn't proud of Sasuke for using Fire Sade at such a young age, but instead was allured by the idea that Sasuke could become a new prodigy of use during a future rebellion. In Fugaku's eyes, Itachi was a failure because he did not appear to support the Uchiha. Fugaku was proud of the Uchiha and put them first over the village. Uncharacteristically for an Uchiha, Itachi felt the opposite. People like Sasuke and Madara at one point took the utmost pride in their heritage, along with seemingly the majority of the Uchiha. Itachi takes no pride in it, and even despises it after Shisui's death. He tells Fugaku and the other Uchiha policemen that they were arrogant over their clan. They also are restricted over this, and he even calls it a worthless obsession. This brings up its own provoking question over whether or not you should take pride in things like your nationality, ethnicity, and gender. None of these characteristics are something we decide, so should we really be proud of them? Do they really define us? Most Uchiha seem to think so, but not Uchiha like Itachi and Shisui. This may be because their heritage is just an uncontrollable circumstance. They just happened to be born as an Uchiha. The Uchiha Senju War eventually melted down into this. They were only fighting because they happened to be born into their clan. What's ironic is that a dead Uchiha may have reincarnated into a Senju, who went on to kill other Uchiha before being killed by an Uchiha. The series is iffy on who reincarnates and who does not, but this certainly seems like a possible scenario. This is all something we should question ourselves over as well. Should we really be proud over something like our ethnicities when we didn't even choose it? It's natural for the Uchiha to be proud of their heritage. They are the strongest clan in the world after all. Itachi and Shisui took the road less traveled among their brethren, prioritizing the village of the Uchiha. They don't have a blinding pride that causes them to overvalue one clan over another. And that is where the source of conflict centers around for Itachi's situation here. He chooses the village over the clan, but he does not blindly support the Leaf. He was not happy at all with how they handled the situation, considering that he told Sasuke the Leaf has his dark side. Itachi is independent of the pride that comes with being born into a certain clan or a certain village. So it makes sense that he originally came up with a solution independently along with Shisui. Shisui wanted to use Kodo Matsukami to convince Fugaku to not rebel. This was a peaceful solution that was ruined by Danzo taking Shisui's eye. Shisui had to choose between telling the Uchiha and not telling them. Telling them would start the rebellion, but not telling them would mean he would have to commit suicide. He selflessly put others' lives ahead of his by sacrificing himself to prevent a violent conflict. His time to choose came earlier than Itachi, and he chose the village. He asked Itachi to do the same before dying. Shisui gave Itachi his other eye, hoping it would be of use posthumously. Had he not done this, Itachi would not have stopped Kabuto from using Nagato to kill Naruto. Itachi did not figure out how to use this eye in time to stop Fugaku from leading the Uchiha rebellion. I'm sure he would have used it if he had enough time, but he didn't. This left him in a position where only violence could occur. Either the Uchiha would be eliminated, he would join the coup, or he could refuse to participate at all. This brings us back to the trolley dilemma I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Essentially, a train is heading towards 5 people tied to the train tracks. You have the option to pull a lever to divert the train onto another track, with only one person tied down to it. A real-life example of this would be the use of nuclear weapons to end the Second World War. Had they not been used, there would have been potentially over 10 million deaths in an invasion. Only a few 100,000 died as a result of the bombings. That example of the trolley problem was much easier than Itachi's. Itachi had to personally slaughter his entire extended family in order to save the lives of many that he would never even meet. If you had to pick between one loved one and 5 strangers, who would you pick? Would you really kill someone close to you if it meant you could save 5 people you'd never meet? If you did, is that something that should be praised? When it comes to what Itachi did, many seem to hold it against him. So let's examine what would happen if he didn't pull the lever to divert the train. Hiruzen himself said that stopping the Uchiha would not have been easy. The Uchiha were so feared that Granny Chiyo said that you should never fight an Uchiha one-on-one. This is coming from someone who had been one of the top jonin in the Sand Village for decades. The Uchiha would have most likely had a high kill-death ratio. So even if we take the low estimates of deaths here, it would have already exceeded the Uchiha massacre. Best case scenario is that Itachi does not warn the village and the coup is successful. The elders are killed along with the Roots and many other Anbu members. It wouldn't be a very likely scenario though. All the jonin would have likely joined. What Itachi and the elders really feared was the other nations attacking while the Leaf had inner turmoil. If this conflict became drawn out, the Leaf's borders would have been very vulnerable. A was highly fixated on empowering the Cloud, so much so that he tried to take Hinata's Byakugan many years after the Third Great Shinobi War. Onoki was also a very opportunistic leader. Ultimately, any scenario ends with much of the Hidden Leaf's powers diminished. This power vacuum could have led to the Fourth Great Shinobi War, which would far exceed the deaths in an Uchiha massacre. Many criticize Itachi for killing children, but child soldiers were used in the Third Great Shinobi War. It's also possible some Genin would fight during the coup as well. Konohamaru fought a path of pain after all. Itachi either standing by or joining the coup is the equivalent of not pulling the lever and letting more people die. This more than likely includes children, considering Uchiha Genin would have participated. Had he only killed the shinobi, it would have been considered odd among the villagers in other villages. It wouldn't have been convincing enough. Other villages could have smelled the blood in the water. It also would have created many young children that would have grown up as threats to the village. Sasuke wanted to destroy Konoha even after he had time to reflect, while healing from Itachi's eyes being transplanted into him. Had he not killed the other children, the Anbu would have probably cleaned up on Danzo's orders anyway. Ultimately, no matter what Itachi did, deaths were imminent. Originally, he tried to avoid this with Koto Matsukami, but that fell through. Itachi should not be scolded for committing the Uchiha massacre. This is because there was absolutely no way to avoid bloodshed. He even actively lowered the potential amount of deaths by personally killing those close to him. He pulled the lever to kill a loved one instead of 5 strangers. If deaths were inevitable, he should be revered for killing his clan to lower the total death count, even if that involves kids, because those Uchiha children were on their way to death anyway. At least Itachi can make it quick for them, and possibly save many more children from a potential world war. This was highly unselfish of him, and made him a bigger man than most other characters in the series. He was perfect leading up to the Uchiha massacre, and did something many others would not be strong enough to do. Please note how I said up to the Uchiha massacre. Despite all the stress brought onto him for years, he remained just. His passion for peace would not even be swayed in the prospect of killing his brethren. The only passion he had that could bend his morals was Sasuke. His unrelenting love for Sasuke was his character flaw. He made a deal with the Leaf that he would do his mission only if Sasuke was spared. It's arguable that Itachi should have just put Sasuke out of his misery. What's not arguable is whether or not Itachi treated Sasuke right after the massacre. Itachi was intent on manipulating Sasuke's hatred into making him stronger. Not just for Sasuke's general benefit, but to make Sasuke strong enough to beat Itachi in a fair fight. Itachi himself said that he wanted Uchiha to kill him for dishonoring the clan. The idea itself is selfish, and that he is emotionally abusing Sasuke for his own wish. It's ironic since Sasuke is supposed to be his ultimate love, and yet he selfishly, emotionally abuses him, and to the extreme. He puts Sasuke under a Tsukuyomi that shows his parents dying over and over after Sasuke discovers their bodies. After that, he tells Sasuke to kill his best friend in order to obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan. This was mainly so that he could surpass Itachi and kill him. So he was willing to spare an innocent life just for his desire to be judged. It could be argued that Itachi was not in a good place after killing everyone, and that's why he went it so extreme. That's not the case though, because he went even more extreme years later when they met in part 1. Itachi saw this as an opportunity to re-inspire Sasuke's motivation to get stronger. He displayed his superiority by beating Sasuke until he couldn't move. After that, he used a Tsukuyomi that put Sasuke back in the massacre for 24 hours straight. Despite all this time to reflect on his actions, he ended up wrongly doubling down on his selfish ambitions. This backfired on him, since it was this fight that sent Sasuke to Orochimaru searching for power. It was not until post-death that Itachi realized his mistake. At first he realized that trying to do everything by himself was impossible. He tries to rectify this by letting Naruto take on problems such as Obito and Sasuke, while he stops Kabuto. He also teaches Naruto to not make the mistakes he did. Once Naruto gained the power of the Nine Tails, he became dead set on stopping the war himself. He even says this several times verbatim. He sends shadow clones everywhere, but this exhausts him really. At that rate, he was due to fail like how Itachi failed. Itachi wanted the best for his brother, but ended up abusing him and steering him down a wrong path. Itachi eventually reached Naruto since he let the Five Kage take on Madara without him. One way Itachi reached Naruto was bringing up how his father relied on the others around him. This is interesting because Minato and Itachi are similar characters. They were both the better versions of their respective protagonists and served as people for them to surpass for most of the series. They also were prodigies and golden boys who were put in near impossible situations. Minato didn't have to die, nor did he have to seal Kurama and Naruto. He chose to sacrifice himself in order to prevent a possible world war caused by a tailed beast imbalance. This is similar to how Itachi had sacrificed his clan in order to prevent a future world war. Itachi calls Minato a great Hokage for doing this, but when Minato hears about Itachi's sacrifice, we don't get to see his reaction, sadly. It would have made for an interesting parallel or comparison. Itachi may have sacrificed like Minato, but he mistakenly did not defer some responsibilities like Minato. Minato put his faith in Naruto as the savior of the world, and Itachi grew to understand that was the right idea. Along with that, he also acknowledges that he should not have weaponized Sasuke's hatred. He combines these acknowledgements into believing that he should have told Sasuke about the coup from the start, not just to be honest with Sasuke, but because he believed Sasuke could have helped him convince their father to not rebel. If he would have relied on others like Minato, then perhaps there could have been a peaceful ending for the Uchiha. At that time, he falsely believed that he had to do everything by himself. This kind of thinking set up a chain of reactions that almost ended with Sasuke attacking the village. Itachi would have ultimately doomed the village that he tried to protect, but once he realized his mistakes, he was able to correct them. He finishes this character arc by telling Sasuke he would love him no matter what he does going forward. This does not translate to him supporting Sasuke destroying the Hidden Leaf Village. He made it clear to Naruto that it was up to Naruto to stop Sasuke after they defeated Nagato. Even back before Itachi had his character arc, he asked Naruto if he would kill Sasuke to protect the village. This was right before Itachi's death, but I imagine the sentiment remained the same when he undid Edo Tensei. I know in the anime Itachi's hand appears behind Sasuke's during the last Rasengan Chidori clash at the final valley. This Sasuke had changed from the one Itachi had last seen. Sasuke no longer wanted to destroy the village at that point. If he had wanted to, many things point towards Itachi supporting Naruto. Itachi valued Sasuke equally as important as the village before his death. After he learned from his mistakes, he put the village over Sasuke and learned to rely on others to avoid failure. Minato and Shisui would have done the same. I think I've said everything I wanted to say and just want to synthesize it all at this point. Itachi's actions before and during the massacre were perfect. He should not be looked down upon for killing those that were about to risk starting a world war. He was not in a situation where the children could have been spared either. He slaughtered his own clan in order to save countless strangers, that would go on to later hate him. I only have admiration for that. What I don't admire is him emotionally abusing Sasuke excessively afterwards. It was selfish of him to do that just so that he could be judged for dishonoring his clan. Furthermore, he wanted Sasuke to kill an innocent person so that Sasuke's power could surpass Itachi's. That's not something a true pacifist does. However, he learns from his mistakes after seeing his failures. He teaches Naruto to learn from his mistakes, and he guides Sasuke back towards protecting the Leaf Village. He even says he should have just been honest with Sasuke and relied on him to find a peaceful solution for the Uchiha. It's a very overlooked character arc in the series. Ultimately, Itachi had some hiccups in his morality along the way. However, he started morally pure and also ended morally pure. And despite the mistakes he made, he was still overall fantastic morally. He just had some complexities to his character, and with that comes some bad. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say. And thank y'all for watching, and I guess I'll see y'all next time.